Welcome to this video presentation of spiritual astrology, and I'm Altazar of this YouTube channel and altazarastrology.com. This presentation is on Kristi Noem, her astrology, subtitled Heart of Ice, Homeland Brutality. So many of you have viewed my previous videos. I am a spiritual astrologer with over 40 years experience, and spiritual astrology, as many are coming to realize, is much deeper and more sincerely and honestly revealing of the truth regarding society and people and their roles in society as well as the world. I have been evolving what's known as forensic astrology, which is exposés on famous humanitarian leaders like Mahatma Gandhi or Martin Luther King Jr., politicians like Joe Biden or Donald Trump, celebrities such as recently Rob Reiner on his unfortunate demise. Also, criminals like some serial killers like Ted Bundy, and or even heroes that we have celebrated throughout history, like George Washington or Abraham Lincoln. So, forensic astrology, as an extension of spiritual astrology, is oriented to revealing the truth about why these people are who they are, the karma, personal growth, or healing issues they have that motivates them to become a certain identity and impact in the world. If you find this information interesting and insightful, I encourage you to subscribe. As you'll view on my channel, Altazar Astrology, I have around 44 videos already on a whole range of topics, from relationship compatibility to location and living astrology to finding your life purpose and career. And along with these more exposés on interesting people. So you'll be notified if you subscribe of the next interesting and insightful video that is posted. So to the video presentation and expose today, Kristi Noem. Now, the subtitle is Heart of Ice, Homeland Brutality. So how this is going to be unfolded is I'm going to, as usual, start with Kristi Noem's natal chart. And as many of you who are, many subscribers here are amateur or if not professional astrologers, or otherwise, the natal chart is the foundation of understanding who someone is and their potential identity expression. And that is from this ancient Vedic point of view and Chinese astrology and the Hebrew Kabbalah and other mystical teachings. Your astrology chart is said to be your spiritual report card in the school of life, and revealing your karma, where you may have earned and meritorious gifts and talents coming into this lifetime, and where out of ignorance or egoic we'll take a look now at Kristi Noem's natal chart, and I'll attempt to offer justification for why I have the subtitle that I've presented. We'll also then take a look at the chart of the United States and Kristi Noem's connection to that, and also Donald Trump's chart with the United States. And then we'll look at a current horoscope, where the planets are currently as they are activating and or magnifying certain issues associated with Kristi Noem and her uh, evolving identity in this country and personally. So let's take a look at the chart of Kristi Noem, and that will take a moment to bring up here. Okay, so now you should be observing the natal chart of Kristi Noem on the left of the side of the screen. I believe that would be how you'd be viewing it. And then the chart of the United States in the inner ring, based on what you're all aware of, the birth date of the United States, Declaration of Independence, July 4th, 1776, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So, what we are now looking at for Kristi Noem, I'm going to use my pointer here. Kristi Noem is born on a Tuesday. Now, when I approach anyone's astrology natal chart, first thing I do look at is the day of the week that they are born under. Now, that day correlates with one of the planets in our solar system. What's more obvious is Saturday, for example. Guess what? Saturn Day. So if you're born on a Saturday, you correlate with Saturn as a theme. If you're born on Tuesday, that's Mars Day. Now, let me preface this perspective for anyone who is having a professional karmic and spiritual astrology natal chart life purpose reading, that all these symbolic karmic implications in the chart are not fixed in terms of how a person may experience their childhood and then evolve into their adult life. And so, in other words, this viewpoint is that if a person does somehow connect with some degree of moral compass or spiritual growth, psychological growth principles, or humanitarian inclinations, or deeper spiritual growth practices like meditation, prayer, and other community or church or other organizational connections, then they are more likely and fortunately to evolve the positive direction of their symbolic karma. However, if their symbolic karma shows a negative proclivity, let's say a proclivity towards anger, violence, impatience, or greed and theft, or criminality, or infidelity and lust in relationships, there's a range of potential, and this is not meant to be moralistically religious. This point of view just simply indicates how certain karma can deprive a person of what we all seek, and that is peace of mind, inner contentment, a happiness that is more associated with an experience of joy within that can be reflected or experienced with others out in the world. And evolving courage to be more and more an authentic person that lends towards uh, self actualization. So, and that also lends towards being a prosperous person. The more one loves what they do because it reflects their truth and the honest gifts and talents they have, the more naturally they magnetize the wealth of the universe and connection with others to support that prosperity. So that's, again, another quick summary of this perspective. So I'm not taking a position of being a Republican or a Democrat, a liberal or a conservative. I'm evaluating Kristi Noem's chart, and the reason I have the subtitle I do is because when we look at a person's chart and their karma, the symbolism of that chart, we want to see, well, what it implies about their propensity for sharing gifts and talents, as well as the proclivities they may have towards being difficult and or negative people. And so then when we look at someone who's grown up and is an adult and taking an identity role in the world, we want to see how's that being played out? Are they and have they matured through especially their hard karma, their negative proclivities? Or are they just rampantly out of control? That could be the extreme. Let's say, look at the chart of a serial killer. So, or they could be, they're shades of gray, anywhere in between. So let's take a look now at Kristi Noem, born on a Tuesday, Mars Day. Mars is the planet of aggressiveness. Mars is the planet of on the high side, the potential for an egoic, assertive self-starter who embraces moralistic or humanitarian principles and or principles of healthy self-expression, often through sports or culture, and can become and evolve through their assertive uh, desire for self-reliant identity development, a powerful uh, leader or inspirational example. And just to draw on another uh, celebrity and humanitarian, Martin Luther King Jr. was born on Tuesday, Mars Day. So there you have an example of a more independent self-starter who evolved to be a leader with a mission, in his case, for civil rights and the eventual amelioration of the conditions for Afro-Americans and others. So that's an underlying theme for someone born on a Tuesday. However, the other extreme is Mars Day, is someone who is highly self-absorbed, egocentric, extraordinarily demanding, possibly quite narcissistically defensive of all and what they believe and forcefully try to implement, and can be a zealot of ideologies and or belief systems, uh, and can have such a passionate, self-absorbed, egoic sense of righteousness that they could even justify the use of excessive force or violence to promote what they consider ideologically uh, required. And in some cases, you will find people born on Mars Day. Well, many might be in the military or in law enforcement, or in the extreme, could be religious or political terrorists. Okay. So now, well, with that said, we're going to take a look and see, well, how's that implied in Kristi Noem's chart? Does she have karma that the planets indicate about that possibility? And especially born on Mars Day, we want to hone in on that. So let's look for Mars here in the chart. And look at that. Well, we have Mars in Pisces at 13 degrees in the first house. And by the way, in Donald Trump's chart, he has Mars right on the cusp of the first house. So Mars and the first house, the Aries house, is the house of uh, egocentricity. Now, not everyone is going to be, self-absorbed that way, but the first house is important for a person to evolve a healthy sense of self and a healthy sense of self in relationship to others and the world, or be someone who has views life in a isolated, separate way, in an ego way that views their identity being essentially in constant competition with everything and anything that's not in alignment with their belief system or consciousness. So, well, let's see if what that implies. Well, Mars in Pisces does imply someone who has a passion for ideological and or even spiritual and or cultural, uh, if not political, paths of influencing public perspective or participating in public perspective. Although Mars in Pisces in this degree implies more of someone who can have a passion for cultivating positive community and domestic environments. Positive. It's in the Cancer decadent of Pisces. Cancer is the sign of home, family, and community structures. Now, that can be promoting ecologically and positive, safe oriented communities. Or as we're experiencing, it can be someone who has a somewhat aggressive, ferocious approach to antagonizing the home environments of communities for some higher or different ideological purpose. Is it a coincidence that Kristi Noem is the Homeland Security Secretary? But with this placement in a square to Jupiter and the Sun, especially the square to Jupiter, let alone the Sun, the personal identity, but the square to Jupiter, Mars in a square to Jupiter implies, and squares are adverse karma, and we're seeing it acted out. Mars square Jupiter are those who embrace a political, cultural, or spiritual ideology that they have an egoic attachment to the extreme of self-righteousness and are willing to engage in extreme aggressive and non-compromising or uncompromising tactics if not even violent tactics, because from their point of view and the ego point of view is the ends justify the means. So, in other words, even if she is a part of what many suspect in this extreme MAGA Republican right wing, uh, the belief and her connection to Christian nationalism. These are people who believe that their brand of Christianity is absolutely necessary for the salvation and welfare of the American people. And they are willing to ride roughshod over democratic principles or any other ideological or political, like Democrat, opposition because they are so egocentrically entrenched in that belief system. And so, with Mars squaring Jupiter, but let alone the Sun combination, this is someone who not only has the extremist, even potentially violent justification in their consciousness to try to promulgate and force their uh, ideological, spiritual, religious, or political perspective on society. But this is someone who has a Jupiter Sun in Sagittarius adverse to Mars, is someone who has an extremist, a narcissistic egotism. Now, again, I've prefaced this discussion by saying that Kristi Noem, let's say, starting out in this life, could, based on having been affected or connected to more healthy, positive, nurturing directions in her childhood, and more open sensibilities for understanding and accepting other people and their differences, that she could conceivably evolve into someone who's passionate about promulgating democracy and ideology that is inclusive and accepting, and even working towards establishing more uh, mediating relations between different pluralities of society. See, that's a potential that she has, and it's a potential that you might have if you share, if you're a Sagittarius, or even if you're of another sign, if you're, let's say, a Gemini with Sun and Jupiter and Gemini squaring Mars, uh, you have that potential too. So, in other words, don't take what I'm saying here about Kristi Noem hard or personally uh, if you have similar planetary positions or angles or aspects. But take a look at to what extent you are driven and even inclined towards aggressive behavior and narcissistic defensiveness. And another aspect of this is using gaslighting and lies to denigrate and put down differences or people you perceive as your enemies. And so that's where we see Kristi Noem has Mercury Venus. That's now Sagittarius is the sign of people who are here to evolve, and our sun signs are about what we're ultimately here to cultivate positively in self-actualization. Sagittarians are here to teach. They're here to be the ministers in a way of ideology, politics, culture, philosophy, or even religion and spirituality. And so, what is Kristi Noem teaching? You see, we ourselves, become examples. We're here to teach what we're here to learn most. We ourselves, in our behavior, attitudes, beliefs, becoming examples of what we're here to teach. Well, as I've shared, Mercury Venus implies someone who can be pretty clever and tactful in their social relations and even political pronouncements and beliefs and confidence in public speaking. Uh, but then again, we look for the karma and we see the squares again to Pluto. Ooh. Now, this is even more pathological than the Mercury square to Neptune in Donald Trump's natal chart, which I've already shared. If you look at any of the videos I have on Donald Trump, the horoscope for 26 or previous about Mercury square Neptune being someone who is just kind of a chameleon type of communicator, pathological liar. However, and may even be kind of goofy or not necessarily very accurate in their communications. That's in Trump's chart. In Kristi Noem, the Pluto square to Mercury with a Venus is someone who is poignantly and sharply, clearly strategic and perceptive of other people's motivations and the ideological differences and political marketing or media optics that go into forcefully promoting their position and their ideology, even if it's an outright lie. And so, more so than Donald Trump, Kristi Noem has the potential karma for being someone who, as we've talked about, the pathology of being narcissistic, that is someone who is totally self-absorbed and completely egocentrically self-righteous in their belief system and their political ideology, justifying the ends justify the means. And what a narcissist in that context will do is they will strategically evaluate how they can communicate whatever that gaslights or puts down the truth or the actual occurrence of a problem that they've created, and even lies about the conditions of the other person or the problem to support their own considered more favorable justification. And we all clearly have observed more blatantly, due to the, in my opinion, two murders that occurred in Minneapolis at the hands of ICE. And given the free reign of their behavior, justified by Kristi Noem's overall management perspective for that Homeland Security, and how, but more so the example of gaslighting and distorted lies to defend her position and that of ICE, and claiming that in one way or another, Renee Good and Mr. Preddy were somehow domestic terrorists, almost within minutes, if not hours, of the actual violent murders uh, without any investigation and totally gaslighting for their defense and continued attempts to harbor and hide evidence from local law enforcement investigation. So I have here, if this was a court of law that allowed astrological forensic evidence, this is it. This is supportive evidence that Kristi Noem has the karmic proclivity and demonstrated history of being a narcissistic, gaslighting, ideologically driven, pathological liar when necessary to defend and justify uh, criminal, if not illegal or undemocratic or unlawful administration and behavior. When we look at the chart of the United States, we see that Kristi Noem's planets are not favorable to, the other people's planets. Certainly Donald Trump's planets are a little more favorable to the United States than Kristi Noem. See, Kristi Noem's Sun and Jupiter, they straddle the rising sign of the United States. Kristi Noem's identity challenges the either favorable or unfavorable identity and sense of democracy of the United States, because we see that Mars, that adverse Mars of hers, that's the egocentric, extraordinary, narcissistic, even proclivity of violent, ideological, political activism, is adverse not only to the Uranus of the United States, but also to the Mars of the United States, which implies that her ego-based, ideological driven actions, to the extent to which they're even violent, as Mars can imply, are directly contrary to the political, democratic, ideological sensibilities of the United States. And also in square to Mars, that implies outright violent strategies and tactics that are promulgating almost a war against the society of the United States. Need I say any more? Not to mention that that Mercury Venus here opposite the Venus of the United States, just completely contrary to the authentic values of the United States and its orientation towards its people and its culture. This can imply the justification for immigrant discrimination and unjustified incarcerations and oppressive tactics towards people. But then we're going to take another look at where are the planets now in the horoscope for Kristi Noem. And so this is where we're not even going to look at Donald Trump. We've had enough of him in terms of that. But let me just point out that Donald Trump's chart shows here that Kristi Noem's Sagittarian planets are right down here. They are opposite the political well-being of Donald Trump. So even in regards to Donald Trump, let alone her Mars in Pisces, which is over here in his house of relationships, when it's adverse, as Mars in Pisces is adverse to his moon and his sun in Uranus, Mars in the seventh house implies that she is an overt political enemy and liability for Donald Trump. So, even from his point of view, uh, unfortunately, Donald Trump doesn't have a wise or intelligent either counselor or support staff or astrologer to for him to understand who he's with and what he's doing. But we're going to just come up here to look at the planets as they exist here for Kristi Noem. And recording in progress. Now you're observing the natal chart of Kristi Noem on the left, and on the right is where the planets are today. So I am basically showing you what a horoscope really is where the planets are at this date. Sun is in Aquarius and Mercury is in Aquarius as well. We've got a whole stellium of planets in Aquarius. But and wherever the planets are in relationship to the chart of the individual tells us what they may portend in their life in terms of activities that promote or are somewhat easily facilitated for their well-being, identity development, and spiritual healing, or when there are planets in position that imply a challenge that again can be an opportunity for growth and advancement or positivity, or potentially a significant block and challenge to a direction that may be more about a person's selfish egotism and or adverse orientation to society or the rest of the world. So what we are seeing here, and it's no coincidence, I've been following the planets for over 40 years, and you know, uh, to be aware of where they are in a person's chart. And I apologize, we just lost some of our light at the moment, but we're still good. So I'm going to keep the light going here. And so this planetary position of Saturn, you see Saturn at 28 degrees Pisces. Now, Saturn, when it makes an adverse angle to a person's chart, can be quite a challenging time or a very productive time, depending on whether they are properly oriented towards their own well-being and that of the world. Well, Saturn has been at 26, 27, 28 degrees, and you see her Mercury is at 27 degrees Sagittarius. So it implies, as Saturn has been in this position for the past month or so, a direct challenge to that hard karma I talked about, her proclivity to manage and an organization or a department, as well as communicate uh, either properly and honestly for the benefit of society. That's what Saturn is about. It's the most political of all the planets. Or a time when, due to her potential pathological lying, gaslighting, and exaggerated misinformation, she is exposed. Just like in the next few months, Donald Trump, and currently his proclivity towards exaggeration lies, manipulation, and uh, misinformation is being more clearly made obvious to society and the world. So, and the Neptune, and Saturn's moving into Aries, by the way, and Neptune has just also been in the latter degrees of Pisces in a square to that Mercury. That also implies the expose of a person's lack of spiritual or at least ethical truth. And the Neptune moving to the opposite Pluto implies powerful socio-political forces that can begin to further promulgate expose of this proclivity towards mismanagement of an organization, of department, and as well the political communications of Kristi Noem. So you look at that, and you also can note this Uranus aspect, 27 degrees. Look at that, Mercury, 27 degrees in adverse angle again, implies turbulent, disruptive, unstable political dynamics going on in society that can either uh, further a person's communicative ideology or be completely undermining them because they are in way over their head, as it appears that Kristi Noem is. In fact, right now, the Congress, the House of Representatives, is evolving a threat to impeach Kristi Noem if she doesn't resign or isn't fired by Donald Trump. So this completes the perspective on Kristi Noem. I hope you found this insightful. Please do subscribe and get notified of future uh, videos. And also, I'm going to post my contact information here so that you may be able to contact me for either more information about these videos, or also you're welcome to contact me for a free introductory reading. You can email me at altazarastrology@gmail.com and or text, and the text can be done by going to my website, and you also find my texting phone number there as well. Wishing you all well during these difficult times.